Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 10 of COP26. My name is Agatha Mason, and I'm the Director of Generation Climate Europe, and I'll be the moderator of today's session. In today's event, we're going to discuss how science, youth, and politicians can make Europe's Mission Zero a success. Indeed, the fourth goal of COP26 is all about cooperation, working together to deliver. During this panel, researchers, regional politicians, and youth representatives will share their perspectives on how can they join forces in order to deliver on the COP26 goals. This session is organized within the framework of the EU COP26 side events and brought to you by the Young European Federalists, Jeff Europe, Helmholtz Climate Initiative, and NCOR. In the first part of the event, you have a chance to hear from our speakers on the challenges and enablers of multi-stakeholder collaboration. We'll dive into a panel where you'll have a chance to share your thoughts and ask your questions to our speakers. So let me now give a floor to our first speaker, Bert Frinks. He's an Alderman for Sustainability at the municipality of Winterswijk in the Netherlands. Winterswijk is the winner of the European Green Leaf Award for 2022. He'll tell us a little bit more about the role of cities in the green transition and the challenges for cross-border regions. So Bert, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We won this year the European Green Leaf Award, and I think one of the main reasons we won this prestige award for small cities in Europe, because we didn't present us as municipality, but we presented us as a delegation with cooperation of civilian organizations, companies, children, schools. They all make part of our delegation and told their story about how they take part in sustainability. For instance, we have a climate table and the climate energy table. I mean, this consists of diverse participants, companies, also professionals, and they advise our municipality asked and not asked. And they make great part in how our energy policy is at this moment presented to the council. The children planted their school yard with tiny forests and other green elements. We used to make our school yards from concrete and tiles, and they got out the tiles and made a tiny forest. And their example is now followed by 4 other schools. So the prize winning gave us a real boost for other initiatives. We have an enormous discussion in the council on solar fields or windmills for our energy norms for 2030. And we have a youth council, and one member of the youth council did a swipocracy. It means he made a swipe version of what is better. And almost 1,000 youth in Winterswijk participated on this discussion by swiping their opinions. It was a very successful event. Normally, you see for a city council, not much youth who are interested in this kind of things. And now they had their participation on screen. And if you know that Winterswijk has 29,000 inhabitants, then 1,000 youth who take part in the swipocracy is very much for us. What are we going to do with the prize? With the prize comes 200,000 euros. We will take part for 3 goals. One is to deepen our strategy. And the boost can give us a better start. We see that people are getting more involved. Um, is everything going easy? No, not everything is going easy. Winterswijk is mostly a agrarian municipality with much farmers, and our greatest problem is the nitrogen. But we have, as a council, as a city council, no means and no possibilities to influence the choice of farmers how they farm. That is a regional problem, and our country, Netherlands, is famous for their nitrogen problems, and it's not a good famous. Local municipalities have no means to influence that. We are talking to individual farmers about how they see their futures with their children. Can they still keep their farm near to nature? In the meantime, when there is so much nitrogen coming from their individual farm, in very emotional discussions, and the price made it possible that we started these discussions. Heavy. As I said, the price is a boost for a lot of activities. We also go with our neighbor municipalities in our region to take part in the same activities. And one in particular, we are going to talk about cross-border activities on energy production with our German colleagues. And the EU decided some weeks ago that cross-border activities for energy production are allowed. There were legal obstructions, and they are now removed. But it means still that the government of both countries have to adapt this decision in their legislation. That's my story, how we participate in the activities and how we get our citizens and inhabitants to cooperate from 7 years old to 107 years.
Thank you very much for your intervention and for sharing your story. And in particular, it's very interesting to hear not only about the big successes, but also really about the challenges of implementing these sustainable solutions at the local level. And you also mentioned the role of youth in the process, which actually brings us to our next speaker, Andreas Kausen. He's the executive board member at GEF Europe and has been active in different political youth organizations for several years, advocating for youth empowerment and involvement in political decision-making processes. So we'll hear from Andreas a little bit more about the failure of intergovernmental global climate negotiations and also possible alternative processes we should build to tackle the global climate crisis. Andreas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Agatha, and thank you for hosting us today. I'm from GEF Europe, and from our perspective, the global challenges of the climate crisis is indeed very interlinked to how our society and political system today is organized. Our societies are built to have strong nation states that are good at providing answers to local and national problems. But I think we can all agree that what we have seen during the last 2 years with the pandemic and for the climate area, also since the Kyoto Agreement in the 90s, is that we don't really have international institutions and international systems that are built to deal efficient with transnational and global challenges and crises like the climate crisis. If you look at the COP26 so far, I think it has become evident that the COP system is deficient at best and useless at worst. I'm not saying that we should abolish the COP system, but I think many in my generation and youth generations are starting already have lost their faith in the current negotiations setup. If you look at the agreements so far at the COP, you have a bilateral agreement on deforestation with I think around 100 countries promising to end deforestation around 2030. That is a great step, but it is a loose and non-binding agreement, and it is common known that by 2030 it would be too late to end deforestation. That is polluting a lot and also removing crucial forests that captures CO2. There's also agreement on coal that 190 countries have signed, but there is an absence of the major coal users as Australia, India, the US, and China in this agreement. So it's also very loosely defined, this agreement. Then there's the agreement on methane that experts assesses would have only a reduction on 0.1 degree as what they are expecting our the temperature would rise with. So when we look at the trend of COP26, it's non-binding agreements, it's loosely defined agreements, they're filled with loopholes, and they will enter into force when it's already too late, as with the deforestation. The youth generations in the world, and as we see in Europe, has taken massive to the streets during the last years, especially, but also in the last decade, advocating for climate action. I think the movement, the youth movement for the climate activists, we have partially succeeded national. We see national politicians are starting to take action on a national level. It is not enough and it's going too slow, but we see this trend and movement is going in a better direction. But it's not the same we see on the global level. These non-binding agreements are not efficient and they're not working. So what we need on the global level is a climate governance system that are built on the principles of federalism, as we see same tendencies on the European level and also in some nation states. But we need some federal principles that can help hold countries accountable. We need a federalist climate governance system that are built on the principles of democracy, subsidiarity, and most of all, a rule of law. So we can ensure that agreements agreed upon on the global level are held accountable and they are implemented so we can reach our targets. We need to find binding agreements that commit countries to also live up to it, and we need some kind of judicial system that and mechanism that, in line with the International Court of Justice, that can scrutinize and oversee the implementation of these agreements. And then we need an actual fiscal or financial funding of developing countries from the developed countries that actually can mitigate climate changes, but also the transition to a net zero economy in the developed world. Yes, I think that is my remarks from now on. We need to reform in order to be better combat and also to act globally on climate crisis.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for all these thoughts, and it was actually really interesting to hear your different proposals for reforming these global climate negotiations, and also the importance of different principles that you mentioned. So let me now introduce you to our first speaker, Sophie Jäger. Sophie is a 23-year-old interpreter and translator for German and English, specialized in natural sciences. And while studying interpreting and translating, Sophie's teachers approached her about taking part in the conference of the region, NCOR. And she was a youth NCOR representative there, and is very happy to speak a little bit more about her experience, and also what are the kind of main messages from the youth corps delegates and the vision regarding climate action and circular economy and the different ecosystem services. So Sophie, we would love to hear from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Agatha, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and to represent the youth corps delegates who tirelessly worked on their contribution to the NCOR declaration. During the main NCOR conference, all of the delegates agreed on principles to maintaining and enhancing ecosystem services, circular economy, as well as climate action. And this was manifested in the Tullamore Declaration. The Youth Corps group of 2021 was compiled of young local politicians, youth climate delegates for COP26, part of youth parliaments, and they not only engage in environmental studies, for example, but are also creators of environmental issues platforms that connect people. We work on local boards to create a more sustainable community, and each of us was dearly devoted to the Youth Corps program. The whole of Youth Corps felt that we came up with a solid, concrete summary to refine the NCOR declaration, and we put a great work into making the summary of our points reflect the general direction we personally want a greener future to look like. And we contributed to make the Tullamore Declaration elaborate more on public opinion and awareness. Therefore, the Youth Corps delegates agreed on a common philosophy and hence believe in the best of mankind and an educated and tolerant humanity where world peace and harmony are the focus. We believe in a self-determined individual and in a more sustainable and green future. And even though we aim to create a worth living future for all of mankind with our work, the generation that I was born into and every generation that followed will suffer the consequences of not shifting towards a greener and more sustainable future even more severely. It will be crucial for our children to have an economy that is green, sustainable, and not polluting our environment. Energy, water, waste systems need to become circular. We demand production and consumption habits that do not damage the earth while sustaining a high standard of living. Therefore, it will become essential to make it easier for consumers to choose the right sustainable products. Green and diverse transport options will make private cars unnecessary, creating a choice for efficient systems that pool resources. We call for prioritizing environmental education for all with fact-based environmental information. We want the governments to create a better system of incentives and disincentives that reward environmentally good behavior and penalize bad behavior. Public awareness campaigns and environmental education need to be available to all parts of society, ensuring to tackle misinformation and enabling businesses and citizens to make good choices. We need more and better country collaborations like NCOR and COP26, a better inclusion and consultation of younger people to be in decision-making positions, and a space for nature to protect what we have, like green our cities and make space for wildlife. In order to live within the Earth's limits, we have to ensure we can repair, reuse, and recycle what we buy. Our vision for the future is a greener and more sustainable world, a circular economy, and a society that uses free, low-carbon transport, has access to environmental education and climate action. Being a part of Youth Corps has made us hopeful that real change can happen, but action needs to happen now. This is about the future of our children and your children's children. Thank you for listening to what we have to say.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for not only highlighting the importance of the systemic solutions and really systemic change that has to happen, but also for touching upon all these different areas like energy and transport and education and many others. So this brings us to our fourth and final speaker, Roland Koch, who's the head of communication at Helmholtz Climate Initiative since 2020. Roland will offer us an opportunity to understand the role of research in understanding the climate change and its consequences, as well as the collaboration of researchers and scientists with the decision makers and how that relationship looks like. So Roland, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Agatha, and a warm welcome from my side as well. I prepared a short slide show for you, just 8 slides, to talk about the role of science, of research, and about the communication of climate research. Could you please show the next slide? The Helmholtz Climate Initiative is a very young initiative that started in 2019. We are part of the Helmholtz Association, that's a research organization in Germany, and Helmholtz contributes to solving so-called grand challenges facing society, science, or economy. And grand challenges, for example, are a reliable energy system or a secure ecosystem or treatments against or for previously incurable diseases. And one grand challenge is for sure climate change. So we decided to start, in addition to all that climate research we do since many, many years, this new climate initiative. Next slide, please. What we did is starting 13 new research projects. 4 of these projects are located in the cluster mitigation, and that means they are looking for ways to stop more emissions and to lead Germany on a carbon neutral level in as fast as possible, let's say. And the cluster 2 adaptation has 9 projects, and in these projects we are looking for ways to adapt to all these changes that will come with climate change and that already have come so far. And we are looking for measures to adapt our society to all these changes. Next slide, please. We are located all over Germany, and 15 out of our 18 research centers are involved in our new initiative, and that shows that there is a very vast range or big range of science in our initiative, and there are a lot of competencies from all research fields we are active in and from all disciplines. But what we do is researching together interdisciplinary. Next slide, please. When we started this climate initiative, one thing was the science, what is to be done, and the second thing was how can we communicate what we are doing. And we listened to this new engagement from all these younger people in the streets when they went on the streets, the Fridays for Future movement, and all them what they said was listen to the science. And when we heard this, we decided if the people want to listen to the science, the first thing for us is science must speak. So we decided to foster climate communication. And one part of this is our communication cluster, our office here in Berlin. Next slide, please. That's why we started our climate research communication in January 2020, half a year after the science has started, because we have seen this high demand on fact-based information. Next slide, please. And what we did was creating what we call information hub, a Helmholtz information hub on systemic climate research. And what does this mean? Our task is to provide easily understandable facts, to provide or to explain what we are doing in research in an easily understandable way. This information, from our point of view, has to be absolutely reliable, because it's the latest knowledge from the science, and it has to be delivered in timely action or reaction to debates or discussions or topics that are discussed in the public currently. And it has to have relevance for the life of people. And so these 3 points were central for us: to give information, to get in a lively communication, and to show what competencies there are for the people we are doing this job for. So next slide, please. So this is the way it looks like. We have a central website. We are active on social media channels. We have an experts database where we locate experts to debates or to the media. We are in lively contact with the media. We prepare infographics where we show things and findings from us in an easily understandable way. And that makes sure that we can communicate with the people on all the channels where they are active on, not only on channels we are active on, but the people. So what we did was changing the perspective to look what are the people are interested in, and not only what we can deliver from our side, but what can we deliver, what is interesting for the people, what they really are interested in. So next slide, please. Our interaction groups, for sure, are young people out in the streets. They ask us to deliver information, but we try to interact as well with journalists or with decision makers in politics or in the economy. And for sure, we try to interact with other researchers, research organizations, to network with each other. And that's why we said it's a good idea to be present today, because we have all these interaction groups here in this round, and we can get in a lively contact and discussion about climate change. And what we deliver, you can see on the next slide. We can give information, we can offer to get in communication, and we can show what competencies there are. But what we can't do is making political decisions. That's the job of all the others, of the young people out in the streets, of the politicians like Bert, or of other organizations. But we can give valid information from the science directly. So last slide, that's it from my side, and hopefully we get in a lively discussion now.
Thank you very much, Roland, for sharing with us that role of science and scientists can really play in addressing the climate crisis. And also thank you very much to all our speakers so far for sharing their perspectives. So we'll now move on to our panel discussion where you, our audience, can ask questions to our speakers. So you can do so by going on Slido and entering the code COP26 side events. And please make sure to select the online channel. And you should also see a direct link to the Slido on the EU side event platform. So before we jump into those questions, I wanted to talk a little bit more about a thing, which is that We have heard these different ways that politicians, youth, and researchers work on strengthening the climate action, contributing to that transition. What I would be curious about to hear from our speakers is how can we bring these different stakeholders together? So, and really very specifically, what do you think, what is in your opinion the biggest challenge of multi-stakeholder collaborations on climate action, and how can we address it? So maybe for around minute or so from our panelists, feel free to also share your own experience of working together with other groups or different stakeholders. So let me maybe jump into Andreas, to you first. I would love to hear from you a little bit more around that. So the challenges and the ways that you think we can best address that.
So the challenges between collaboration of youth organizations, science, and what was the last? Sorry.
So it really is about your perspective on what do you think is the biggest challenge of multi-stakeholder collaborations. So when you bring different actors together, and it could be youth organizations versus other actors, or it could be a more general perspective on what you think are the kind of key challenges out there.
Well, I think when talking to other activists or other people from youth organizations, it is not such a big problem, because we have along down the road the same objectives of better climate action, stronger climate action, but it's also a challenge when you need to act on not only a national level but also a European level, because then the system and the logics they can tend to change. In GF Europe, we have entered into a network, Generation Climate Europe, as you are spearheading, which is a great network for us as a member organization to contribute with. In Generation Climate Europe, we have a lot of different member organizations with a lot of different perspectives. We are organizing in GF 13,000 people, young people that advocates for federal Europe and for a federal Europe to take more climate action. But it is a great addition to our work when we cooperate with other member organizations in a structured network where we have other perspectives from other member organizations. I think that is creates a stronger voice and let us be heard more in climate policies advocacy when we stand together with other youth organizations. That is a different logic than you have maybe on a local level or a national level, where there is a shorter connection between the political system and the actual action. But when you are on the European level, that is something that we have enjoyed very much the last year. So engaging in networks where you can focus on your message together, where you can organize organizations under one common message, that is can be challenging, but it is also something that definitely strengthen the voice of the youth, I would say.
Thank you very much, Andreas. So really that idea of, when you work with multi-level issues and processes, there's always this challenge of bringing different people together, and networks can really offer that opportunity to make sure that voice is heard. So Sophie, I would also love to hear from you on this question, since you have been involved in youth activism and being an activist yourself. I would love to hear from you a little bit more on what do you think is the key challenge. Would you agree with Andreas, or would you maybe have some other thoughts on this, and also how we can really address it? So how can we take very concrete steps to really address that challenge?
Thank you. So during our work for the Anchor Declaration, the Youth Core delegates agreed that one of the major problems is that the major players and companies, manufacturers, it's too easy for them to say climate change is not happening. It's too easy for them to say, I don't have to do anything, so I won't do anything. So for us, it was really about incentives and disincentives for big players on a European level, but also on a global level. So I definitely agree with Andreas. A solution for me would be that if big players are forced or urged to actually do something to decelerate climate change, it could be like bring youth people into their companies because they have to do something. Many young people have already a big interest in decelerating climate change. We could equip young people with information, with education to exactly tackle this, to have cooperations with other firms. So this will be our solution.
Thanks a lot, Sophie. And Roland, I'm looking at you here because in your presentation, you did talk about your collaboration with different actors. So not only citizens, especially young people, but also really many others. So I would love to hear from you also on what do you think is that key challenge, maybe what you've experienced as that key challenge, and what do you think is that key solution or enabler to really tackle that?
A key solution, that's a funny question. I think that's what we're all looking for. What I think is a main challenge is just to find each other. There's a lot of information, of valid information, and from my side, I think it's most important to build up all these networks, to find the right partners, to find the ones who give information and who need information, and just to give the fitting information. So to bring the right facts at the right time to the right people. That's for us most important. And I think for all the others, it's most important to find each other and us. So I think events like this one here are very important for all of us, just to get in contact and to build up networks. But to be honest, I don't know the solution for all these questions. We just hope that we can give a little bit of impact and input in all this.
Thank you, Roland. And yeah, I mean, of course, there's no one ultimate solution, but this is also space for us to talk about it, discuss it, and really try to find the best way to move forward. So, Bert, I would also love to hear from you. I mean, coming from a more local level, and also having now heard about kind of challenge of kind of multi-level cooperation, but also bringing in the right information, finding the right people. What did you find when you were working also in a very cross-border region as the key challenge, and what do you think is a key step to tackle it, or one of the key steps to tackle it?
I agree with Roland. The question is to get people informed at the right moment, at the right time. And my greatest concern is to prohibit a clash between generations with vested interests versus future interests for youth people. Vested interest, for instance, for our farmers prohibits, and they keep change away from them, while youth is asking for change. And this is on a local level very hard, because you don't want your community to split up. And then it is the question, when do you get whom together? And my main cause of interest is we are not standing opposite to each other. We have to stand together. Youth, vested interest. On a local level, people are interested in their local community, and that's the interest they should go together with and form this network. I really strong believer of networks on different levels, on local level, on regional level, on national level, and international level. I myself, I'm working on a local level because I'm feeling there is my strength. Knowing to know people, to bring them together, to make them go together and make it personal. All these different questions, all these different themes, you must have a personal bond to go to action. Tonight I have a council meeting on heat change. How do we going to heat our homes in the future? Will it be electric? Will it be all kinds of possibilities? You stand up with a personal declaration how you experience climate change. And then you can talk about how others get involved, also with their personal climate change. For instance, the last 3 years it was very dry and heat. Some farmers experienced great losses of income because their yield didn't come. This year we had an enormous problem with rain. And make it a personal level. Start talking about this personal level and what it does to your own neighborhood. And then you see that people who are standing opposite to each other are going to talk about together. And that is also the way how we can involve youth, because they are very, they don't talk with council members because they say, well, they just talk and talk and talk on vested interests. It's not my future. You have to search for how we can bond people, and on all levels. That's how I looking at it. And then you have the right moment with the right information to go a step ahead.
Thank you very much, Bert, for sending such a strong message. So a lot of you touched upon also the inclusion of different stakeholders, of different actors. And we have a question actually from our audience on when we talk about these different communities and stakeholders, how can we make sure that we're able to bring the opportunity for everyone? So that includes minorities, that includes marginalized communities, that includes women, that includes young people, often actors that are not actively included in decision-making processes at all different levels. So maybe let me start with Sophie on this. I would love to hear from you a little bit more on what you think is really necessary to make sure that this really is an inclusive, participatory transformation.
So what first got in my head was that we need to make it a subject in school to offer education about the environment to already young children, to have awareness for these issues.
Thank you, Sophie. So climate sustainability education. Bert, you wanted to jump in on this one?
Yes, I used to be a teacher before I became a politician, so I agree with Sophie. I think the jury of the European Green Leaf Award was moved when the children told about their future, and the other delegations told about we are doing it for our children. And with our delegation, the children told what they want to do and what were their hopes, and it's one of the reasons why we got this prize, I think. I heard a sentence not long ago. The elders say we do it for our children. The people of 20 to 40 say we do it for our children, and the children say we do it for us, because the next 70 years we will be the ones who have the problems with the climate change. I'm becoming for the third time a grandparent. I know for who I'm doing these things. It's the children. And they have to be educated. That I agree with Sophie.
Thank you very much, Bert, and also for bringing in that personal element to your message. Andreas, I'm looking at you. So we talked about climate education, we talked about sustainability education, really including young people and also children in the processes. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, well, I think I agree very much with the Bert and Sophie, what they said, that this needs to be an inclusive process. One thing could be put it on mandatory to be taught about this more in school in all sorts of way, not only in terms of making a climate neutral society, but it's also a matter of changing our economy. And I think that is a crucial question for the future. I really agree with Bert when he was talking about how there are some vested interests that are can be hesitant or concerned or maybe reluctant towards a green transition, because it affects, will affect, and it does already affect how we live and how we work today. One of the big things I think that is a challenge across the world, not only locally, regionally, but internationally. It's all corners of the world, is that people who feel their jobs and their livelihood are threatened by international agreements on climate agreements, because they feel that their jobs maybe would be taken away from them. That is a genuinely real concern that we should all start talking more about. Maybe these people are not that included in the process as they should be, but they have a huge role to play as well. One of the classic examples of people working in coal mines are concerned what they should do if their coal mines is shut down. And that is why we not only need a green transition, but it needs to be a socially just and socially sustainable transition. So it's not only about financing windmills, renewables, electric cars, but we also need to finance new jobs and new upskilling and reskilling of people. I think many in my generation, they know they're going to be on the labor market for a long time, and maybe up to they will be over 70 years, and they know that the job they are trained for today might not be the job that they will be having in the years before they retire. So we need to start to think more socially about how to make this a transition social just across the globe. And so people that work in CO2 intense industries today, like coal production, etc., they get reskilled, get new skills, so they can be a part of the green transition and also have a great job when we reach complete the green transition. Because we need everybody to chip in, but it also needs to be people that we need people that knows how to build renewable energies, windmills, etc. And we don't have the capacity to do that today. So it needs to be a more holistic way of thinking of this transition, not only in renewables and green transition, but also socially sustainable transition. And if we do not build that bridge, that link between these two, I think that that we are doomed to fail in this.
Thank you, Andreas, and really a great point also, as these discussions around climate action become more and more polarized, not only in Europe, but also at the international scale. Also really that importance of creating those spaces where we can disagree with each other and not necessarily just say, you know, let's nod and say, this is the kind of space where everyone kind of has the same perspective. So we talked about climate education, just transition. You also mentioned financing new jobs and skills. Roland, I would also love to hear from you, from your perspective, also being involved in the science part of that, and also as a researcher, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, for us, this means one central point, making things easily understandable and understandable for everybody. Everybody needs to understand what goes on and what happens and what science finds out. And that's the point we want to do, and the task that we have to do, just making it understandable for everybody, because nobody has to be ashamed if he or she doesn't understand what science is talking about. Scientists often don't understand what their colleagues are talking about. So how can we do? And that's our job in communication, to deliver findings and facts in a way everybody can understand. And what I think is most important for everybody of us is asking if you don't understand anything, what science is doing or what politics is doing or what's going on. Everybody is asked to ask. That's my opinion.
Thanks a lot, Ron. Actually, since you are talking about the language and communication around, we have a really interesting question in the chat, and that is, do you have any advice to climate activists about the language and style of communication they can use to be more successful in advocating for climate action?
Yes, the style should be the one, what I just said. Everybody should understand what you're doing and what you're talking about, and should understand it easily. If you talk in your specific language, nobody can follow and nobody can understand what you're talking about. And that's most important. That's the main point.
Thank you very much. And we have another question also, kind of jumping in back to the EU governance levels and to the role of the EU that we talked a little bit more about before. The question is on what internal and external steps should the EU take to become a global leader in climate action and promote its climate ambition worldwide? So really around bringing in the role of the EU in these international processes. So I think, Andreas, I'm going to jump to you on this one. I would love to hear from you on what you think are the key steps or key actions.
Thank you. That is a very great question, and I don't have the complete answer to that, but it is something that we spend a lot of time to think about in GEF. Well, first of all, on the internal level, inside of Europe, I think what we see today in terms of legislation, it is on the right track. And the discussion is not how to legislate on to make a more sustainable economy in Europe. It's more about how ambitious it is, and I think we can all agree that it should be more ambitious than it is today. Then there is this discussion of what and the things I said before about making social just transition is the same that we see in Europe. I think one of the biggest challenges in Europe is that we have different member states that are very hesitant to put forward ambitious reduction targets, and they are maybe hesitant to do it because they have very, very carbon intensive industries and a lot of people relying on these industries to pay their bills, and that is a big challenge that we do not address on the European level. We leave that to the national level, but on the other hand, on the European level we put a lot of ambitious targets to implement on the national level. So there need to be maybe a new way to do this on the European level, and that including creating a European fiscal capacity, a real capacity, a European budget that can finance this transition. What we see today is an unambitious budget, European budget, the multi-annual financial framework, to be exact, that is not capable of financing both green transition on and a social just transition. So that needs to be changed. Then we see proposals like a carbon border adjustment mechanism that will allow to put forward more ambitious climate policies in Europe, and then also influence the international level. On the international level, I think Europe should advocate for a reform of the World Trade Organization and also of the COP20 and the COP system in order to incorporate more sustainable, environmental sustainable practices in the trade rules, and also to make the countries in the COP more they need to implement their agreements they agree upon. I think that will be my last word, and I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. This is for so many different ideas and proposals. So just being mindful of time, what I would like to do is just jump very quickly to all of our speakers for 30 seconds or a minute or so, just to hear from you. What do you think is the main takeaway from you from today's sessions? Really, we talk about so many different issues. We talk about solutions and challenges in education and just transition and upscaling and science. So I would love to hear from you, maybe starting with Sophie. What do you think is your main takeaway from today's session?
Just make it really short, make education on environmental issues omnipresent in schools, in society, with friends, during your everyday life.
Thank you very much, Sophie. So Roland, what is your key takeaway from today?
Well, I would say my take-home message today is it is good to speak with each other. It is good to come together. And please don't be shy. Come to us, come to all of us, ask, looking for new networks, and try to foster our networks and work together on this big challenge we all face.
Thank you very much, Roland. And Bert, what is your takeaway?
I'm working on a local level, and I must remember there are more levels and take part in this network.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Andreas, what is your key takeaway from today?
Yes, I'll do it very short. I think Bert's and Sophie's points on education, but also on local network, and also the challenges and different positions that can be on a local level that needs to be addressed. And the way that they have been doing it has been very inspiring for me to hear, and that is some takeaways that I will take with me forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I would like to really thank all of our speakers today. It was really, really interesting to hear from so many different perspectives and talk about so many different issues. Really, it's such a great opportunity, as we also talk about today, to have that platform and that space to exchange our ideas. We might not have the final solutions or the ultimate solution, but I think the goal really is to create that platform, to be able to discuss it and to talk about it, to agree and disagree as well sometimes. So thanks also to our audience for following the event online. If you are interested in learning a bit more about the organizers of today and also the actions that they're doing, you can have a look at their website. So it's GEF Europe, Helmholtz Climate Initiative, and NCOR, and also their social media. Thank you so much for joining today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in other events and also in other spaces outside of COP26. Thank you so much and have a great evening.